And thank you, Joseph, for hosting us here. Thank you for being here. One of the qualities of this dragon energy is to bend time. So we can bend time and put all the slides together. So I was, as Michael said, I was trained in the East. So I studied medicine, Western medicine in India. And there I also learned Ayurveda. And then after the course of study, which is a BAMS, then I met people that were teaching acupuncture and Chinese medicine in Jinan. Jinan is the capital of Shandong, where important people were born, like Kunzi, Confucius, for instance, and Sunzi, the art of war. So it's a prolific province, and there I learned Chinese medicine and acupuncture, and I still teach it in the institutes in Italy, where we do electroacupuncture, acupuncture, Chinese medicine. But we mix both, because I'm a clinician. All I do in my day is to see patients, and then I do research as well. So I'll tell you about the research in a minute. Everything we'll see is based on what our masters did before us. So we're standing on the shoulders of giants and the free thinkers of the past. And in Italy, we also have a very specific period, which is Renaissance. This is the time when they realized they had to go back in time. And there was a very peculiar time in our evolution, because the intelligent scientist of the moment realized that going forward is not always good. That's the bias of recency. The recency bias is the more we go towards modernity, the better. And it's not true. So we're here today also to go back. From Renaissance scientists to modern scientists, there was a motto, and the motto is try and retry and try again. So cimento means to apply and to do. Just as Dan put it perfectly, you need to practice. Everything that makes perfect is through practice. So ancient wisdom will tell us what to do, but we need to do it and study it. As a scientist, for instance, we do our experiments more and more times until it sometimes becomes boring. So when I do scientific experiments, I test patients, and we're there, maybe in a clinic, and we do that for days and days and days, but until gold comes, and that is the scientific discovery. What you did before, thank you then, because I know the topic, I know the I Ching, and the way you put it, the idea of being out of your head is also a topic of today. You see here Buddhism, Jainism, Taoism, 600 BC is pretty much is it correct? Yeah, not. Yeah, 1000. Tengrism, which is shamanism, and then Bön. If you study the Bön tradition, they say the Miwoche, the founder, started this type of internal shamanism 18,000 years ago. This is the Indo River Valley. I think you know this symbol. This is the pranava. This is the symbol that represents the creation. The moment when everything was created, as scientists say, like call it the Big Bang, was associated with a sound. And that sound is the pranava, the Om. When you go to India and you chant 108 times the Om, which they made us do every morning, this is why I remember it. At 4 o'clock you wake up, and then you go into the circle, and then you have 100 times Om. This room like this will resonate, and then you have a memory of the sound of creation, because every creation is preceded by sound. That is coming from the Hindus, is coming from the Kabbalah, for instance. So everything that is stimulated has an idea, then goes through a physical vibration. The physical vibration excites some material substance, a gel, let's say, and that gel vibrates, and very importantly, it takes a shape. It creates a shape, and we'll see it. There's also a science that studies this. It's called cymatics. Have you heard about it? Somebody heard cymatics? Cymatics? Yeah. So Plotinus was also a great inspiration of the West, and you'll discover that most of the philosophers, even Hippocrates, even Galen, anatomists, doctors, they all have one thing in common, and probably also Leonardo da Vinci. Do you know what it is? They studied in Egypt. They went to Egypt to study. Galen learned his anatomy from Herophilus, from the school of Alexandria. And Hippocrates was part of the serpent school. You know, even today, the symbol of medicine is snakes, right? So we've seen it this morning. And that is also sinus wave, because they were studying waves back then. So every time we have a philosopher that goes to Egypt, in the West especially, they collect ancient knowledge, which is the root, probably, of Hermetism. And the idea of Plotinus, after Plato, was to discover that sort of internal energy that makes our body what it is, which is almost like the origin of the slide. Remember this old slide projectors? You have the light, then you have the slide, and then you have the picture on the wall, or here. But that is the projection. It's not the original thing. The original thing is inside. And that they call it the psyche. The psyche. That is basically the soul that influences, we say informs, gives the shape. The fact that my nose is like this is not a typical Italian nose. I don't know if you... I was born in Italy, but then I said, I haven't seen this in Italy a lot. So I was curious. I did a DNA test. So 18% of my DNA comes from England. I don't know how it went there, but through Spain and the Celts. So there's a lot of Celt genes in me. I also study genetics. And one of the things that we know is, and this is why I developed 3 types of software. One is called Shay, and it's how we met. Michael and I met through that particular application, is we study the body. And we look at the body and say, what is the morphology? So this is also connecting to what I do in Ferrara University. This is the department of morphology, surgery, and experimental medicine. We study the shape of a person, and we know if that person has a tendency to develop prostate cancer, colon cancer. Depends on the length of their legs, for instance, in ratio to the neck. So it's all mathematical ratios, like a code. And who dictates that ratios? Like a mathematical formula, is call it the internal psyche. Aristotle called it the entelechy. Telos means the goal, the future goal. So we are living in this body because this body is serving a future purpose. That's Aristotle. So Platonic Academy is 386 BC. This is when they started understanding the fact that we are not the body. We are a soul inhabiting the body. Now, eventually this information was kind of lost, and then it went a little bit into religion, up to 300 years after Christ, and then they decided it was too dangerous, because people think, well, but I can be reborn, so there's not a big problem, which is fatalism that you see in India. The Christians didn't like the idea. They wanted people to be concentrated on paying taxes, and so they said, no, there's this life, and then if you do something against the church, you go to hell. Now that's social manipulation. But then in Florence, very late, they said, wait a minute, we found the trick. This is not true. Let's go back to the past. And they went back into this corpus hermeticum and the science of Plato. There was also Giovanni Pico de Mirandola, Marsilio Ficino, Leon Battista Alberti. They were all initiated by this guy, which is the guy you have behind you. Cosimo. His name was not casual. It was just not a name like this. Cosimo means cosmos. Cosmos means able to understand the world. So this is why he founded Florentine art. He was the patron of art and sciences. And so the rebirth of the ancient sciences happened in 1462 or 1450 with the help of their money as well, because they were bankers. The Medici were bankers. They had the money to sustain sciences. And they also revisited mathematics applied to shape, and shape applied to vibration. They knew a lot, but it was all secret, because they didn't want to fight the church continuously. They were an opposite force to the church. And so the soul, this is a very nice book if you're interested, The Soul and Human Nature. This is the Ficino's commentaries to the Enneads. Enneads is the text from Plotinus. And have you ever heard about the golden ratio? Mm-hmm. There's a formula as well that is present in every part of our body, the ratios of our body, the way it's distributed. And Aristotle taught us something really useful that we can use in medicine. So every time you see something, you ask yourself, what is it made of? What is this table made of? Because the material might change the resonance of it. For instance, wood is not as good as metal as a resonator. In our body, the best resonator is bone. If you do something on the bone, it is distributed everywhere. I can vibrate with a percussor the ankle, and my left temporal bone will be hearing it. So everything you do with the bone goes 1,000 meters a second, and it arrives everywhere. What is it made of? And then, how is it arranged? Like, for instance, the hand is made of many bones, but it is arranged in a very specific way. Every time you meet a materialist, they say everything is random. Show him your hand and ask him to show his hand. And you say, well, it's a coincidence then that we have the same shape. Now that repetitive shape that we have is not coincidence, is informed. And then the third Aristotelian principle is who made it? Who created it? That is quite deep because you reach the energetic point. Who made the liver in our body, right? And then what is the purpose? What is the purpose of the liver? Is the purpose similar to the stomach? Not really. If you study medicine, physiology, you see that the liver has detox functions, the stomach has absorption function. The shape is completely different. So shape and function is an absolute rule. Do you want to know the function of a spoon? Study the shape. Is it good for cutting meat, the spoon? No. It's good for soup, pea soup you have here, right? So the spoon has a shape, we have a shape, and then our body comes in different shapes. Body morphology has different resonance point. Somebody will resonate right where the navel is. Some other people will resonate much lower. That, for Chinese medicine, in the Chinese culture, is called the ocean of energy, qi hai, and also the dantian, the field of cinnabar, which is the condensed energy. That happens to be also where the gravity is distributed. You know, if you're living on a planet, you're living on a rock that does 40,000 kilometers circumference in 24 hours. So it's a fast spinning rock that has gravity, that generates gravity. And we're attracted to the center. That's the center, that's D for the Chinese. And Mother Earth for the Maori is Papatuanuku. That every culture has Mother Earth. Now we're going down towards Mother Earth. That's the attraction. According to our length in legs, we have a different distribution of gravity, which then distributes on this anterior-posterior line the way we resonate to mechanical frequencies. And in our body, we have lines where gravity is distributed. This is the atom of distribution, according to Leonardo da Vinci. Leonardo da Vinci was a genius. He had a very different way. He probably lived outside his head all his life, and he had a very acute sense of vision. He understood symmetry, geometric structures. He depicted it. It depicted three-dimensional shapes, and he found shapes that could be the background for life. They called this, the flower of life. The flower of life you'll see in churches in Florence, for instance. Florence means the city of flower. And then Santa Maria del Fiore is a cathedral dedicated to this concept. And you see these ratios all over Florence. Every time you see these ratios, you see the flower, and I call it the flower because it's also a flow. It's an internal flow of energy that is distributed through mechanical vibration, which means you build a temple or a house with that ratios and you live in it. Just talking into this temple will make your body vibrate to a certain frequency, just like a guitar. That's mechanical frequencies. And that's a very, very specific message. Leonardo was part of a sect, because the church was very strong as well. So they had spies in Florence, and they were looking for heretics all the time, somebody that had different thoughts. But he was part of a sort of different sect that was working underground, so everything that he depicted was coded. And this is the sort of message that we learn from him. You can see the square spaced here, and there's 6 equivalent segments. 5 are in the body. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. The 6th is outside the body, where the dragon flies. The dragon soars into the air. Look at this. Devs, you know. This is where intuitions come from. This is where ideas come from, on top of the head. This is the Renaissance period was a secret. The fact that our real place is outside the body, and that we are souls. Ooh. Because they were trying to say, and today science, Dr. Who was saying, but science is disagreeing with most of this. Of course, it's not convenient. If you don't have the urgency of life, if you don't have the sense of material needs, you can't sell anything, right? And science is very, very commercial nowadays. Look at this tradition. Many religions had this tradition of cutting the hair or covering the head, but everyone had this, I call it the truth sphere, because this is what we treat as well. Even in acupuncture, even in Chinese medicine, we treat a point which is called the pai hui, the reunion of all the meridians, where the yang energy tends to be collected and then flow out, which is the part covered in cartilage and not closed in children. And then it closes down, right? And that's another physical sign. That's Leonardo's projection of known local information field, and this is depicted in every scene in the Middle Ages. So every enlightened person, St. Francis or the saints or the people that understood were represented with a light on top of the head. That was a sign, which means they had a different vibration. Their body had a different vibration. This is Santa Maria del Fiore, and this is Santa Maria Novella. Look at this. These are all depictions, this is a magnification, of vibrating patterns. Do you know how they did it? A metallic plate. They vibrated a metallic plate and they dispersed very fine powder. They did it in the 1400 already. And before that, they did it in India. So there was a continuous stream through the Silk Road of information, linguistic, and then paper, gunpowder was coming through that area. But they already knew that if you vibrate a plate, which is very elastic at the same time, you can move it, and you put some non-tight material. This is sand, for instance, very fine sand, or lycopodium seeds. And then you strike this part with a violin bow, you create a frequency. And that frequency will create different shapes. So every part of our body has different frequencies of resonance. For instance, this area resonates with 4 cycles a second. If I do this, or I'm on a vibrating plate and the plate vibrates at 4 cycles, it concentrates on the stomach. If I vibrate it long enough, the stomach will completely stop. This is why we use this on obesity. To treat obesity, we vibrate the body with 4 hertz. With people that have lower appetite, we vibrate, but with less seconds. We do maybe 25 seconds, 50 seconds. You know those vibrating plates? An Italian invented it, Luigi Stecco. And Stecco wanted to recreate bone through vibration, mechanical vibration. This is an article I wrote that is remodeling connective tissue through vibration. That was 2010 on the Integrative Medicine Journal. And there I explained that waves, vibrations, move in the body through a single package. They're called solitones. Solitones like solitary. But they reach a point of accumulation in certain parts. These are the parts that resonate more. You have the same effect when you go into a place and you say, oh, I resonate with this place. You say it, no? You say, I resonate. I don't know, maybe in your language you use another term, but I resonate, it means I am put into resonance. Musician, if you have a tuning fork and you have a 400 hertz and the tuning fork is built to resonate at 440, you have a mild resonance. But if you have 440 hertz, it really vibrates. and the middle is air, and the metal vibrates. So every time you're happy with something, some energy is increasing in volume in your body, and we can also measure it. This is another article I wrote in German in 2014 on vibration absorption in the body. So if I vibrate the body, what happens? This is all the absorption, and there's also a difference in genders. Women absorb frequencies in a different way. They have a different electrical resistance and a different density of both bones and muscles. So you need to know the gender, height, how tall they are, and then you apply a frequency, and you can vibrate the head, you can vibrate the eyes, you can vibrate the shoulder, and you see this is the impedance. Impedance means how much opposition you have from the tissues. It's all a calculation. For instance, the head vibrates at 20 hertz. The spine vibrates at 10 hertz. I take 10 hertz, and this area, you know, when you feel something is good or bad, you have a gut feeling, which is generally a stomach, because your brain and your cerebellum will send a message to your body, which is intuition, at 4 hertz. And then something will happen in your stomach. You say, oh, that's not good. Or, as I like it very much. That intuition happens at 4 hertz, which is theta. 5 hertz is over the shoulders here, this area. So every part of the body vibrates at a specific absorption frequency. And Corey is not here? Corey? No. Corey today was showing the books, and he was showing this picture here. The tuning. Did you see this in the book room? The tuning is basically our spine. Everything you do, when Dan was doing this position, this is called isometric contraction. In Qigong and in many practices that I saw in China, in Shaolin, for instance, they do mapu, they do the horse position, and this is the stay. They're not isotonic or isokinetic contraction. They're isometric. They stay. What happens? A vibration is built inside, and it grows and grows. So everything that you do standing in that position creates internal vibration, isometric vibration. If you do it perfectly, you generate this, 10 hertz. So your body vibrates 10 times per second, which is approximately the same vibration of our planet, which is 7.8, 7.5 accordingly, because if you divide speed of light divided by the circumference of the planet, 40,000 kilometers, you have this number, which means a photon goes around our planet 7.5, 7.8 times in a second, in 1 second, right? So do we have a frequency to connect with our planet? Yes. If we want to speak to our mother, we have theta range, so 7 and below, and then we can speak to our mother. Our mother has a voice, and this is the Shekinah. The ancient Kabbalian experts told us that we are covered in a sheet. That sheet is a sort of magnetic structure, a blanket that covers our planet and defends us from the super yang. In Chinese, the sun is called the big yang, the Tai yang. Without a magnetosphere, we'll be burnt in a few seconds. But this is the yin part that protects us. And that's changing. Dan was saying, can I say Dan? Dan was saying, because I like it because it's Dan, like yes. It's changing. You see declination in degrees east from 1600 towards now. And you can see that the poles move, the magnetic momentum moves. Our planet is in constant change, and this is the network, but it influences our brain. It also influences our immune system. So when we have the solar maxima, when the sun is really yang, we have a peak of autoimmune diseases like lupus, autoimmune arthritis, because there's too much energy and our body cannot, many bodies cannot eliminate the excess of energy, so the hyperreactivity becomes autoimmune disease. Our body is sensitive to magnetic fields with this range. Every time you see this number, M, there's an M here, microtesla. Here, if I take a geomagnetometer, there's probably 30 microtesla. You can download it on apps. You stand 30 microtesla, 50 microtesla. In temples, in very important places, 150 microteslas. So the geomagnetic influence is what the Feng Shui experts call the rings of the dragons. And they say the dragon is underneath the earth, sometimes comes up. And this is where Feng Shui experts, 2,000 years before Christ, started to build their first areas of cult, first areas of practice, because certain points on the planet are thought to be the ones where you immediately meditate. You close your eyes and your body is not felt because there's a different influence. That influence is geomagnetic field. This is our team. This is Valerio. This is Dr. Greco. This is Professor Abram Libov. And we've been studying this for many, many years. Now it's probably 25 years. This phenomenon is called ion cyclotron resonance again, which means there's a field, the vertical field that comes up. We were talking about vertical circles. Your father used this term, Joseph. Yeah, vertical circle. That's the energy coming out of the planet, almost like the voice of the tune of our Mother Earth. But we also have a vibration, which is given by our heart mainly. This is the pump of energy. The strongest field in our body, electrically speaking, is generated by the heart. They interact, the two interact. And when they interact, they have AC electric field and DC. AC is pulsed, alternated. DC is what comes from the earth. We mix it in a cross. And all the ions in our body start doing this. They spin. And they move around. So I can take Matt, put a frequency, and change the cyclotron resonance, so the motion of ions in our body, with a simple magnetic field. Ion cyclotron resonance, geomagnetic strategy for living system, that's this guy here, Abram Libov. And he was our teacher. He was the one that said, look, you can try it with treating diseases. We started, and we had wonderful results. And so they built a company, and they tried to regenerate, recause this effect. You see, you can change. If you produce a frequency of 63 hertz, you can change behavior. You can make a rat more aggressive or less aggressive in 20 minutes if you expose. I use this therapy especially for kids and adolescents because they're quite responsive to geomagnetic fields. This morning, they called me. Yesterday I was speaking about depression and these kids that tried to commit suicide. And I do one session, and we remap, we restructure the brain completely. One session is about 1.5 hours, which means if you give the right impulse, you reformat the brain. You influence the brain to restart again. This is another article I wrote, and this is where we learned that something happens in the brain because we were playing with this EEG, electroencephalographers, and our patients were lying on this mat, creating the vibration, which is not a vibration, it's a magnetic field, alternated magnetic field. And all of a sudden we saw that the brain was like, we call it a Christmas tree, all light up. And we had ranges. How fast is this frequency? This is general range we have in our brain. We have very fast waves, reasonably slower waves, and then these are the waves that we cause while we meditate. This is the slow waves that our brain is producing while we are in deep sleep. We have no REM, no REM. We're just absorbed. So children up to the age of 2 are very much into this one. They generate 1 hertz, 2 hertz. This is me. This is a 14 hertz EEG, Bluetooth operated, and this is areas that I measure in the brain. Now, this is a patient lying on the mat with the wave. Remember, if I speak to scientists, I say this is a 30 microtesla emission, nothing. It's just like the planet. But if I turn it off, this is what I get. The brain shuts off. If I turn it off on again, this is why we were playing, and then I was doing EEG, and accidentally my colleague turned the machine off. This is what we saw. We saw the brain turning off. And then we turned on the machine again, and we had the same pattern. So we studied it on 32 subjects in a clinic on 2 trials, and we saw that it happens all the time. We turn off the machine, and then the brain is not stimulated, but only on a specific frequency. We tried this frequency, the 14 hertz, nothing. The 12 hertz, nothing. We went through all the frequencies. This one was the theta. So between 4 and 8 hertz, the brain responds and says, what? What is it going on? What are you telling me? Is interested and reacting. So non-focused, because we don't put it on the head, we put it on the body, but the brain reacts. Most importantly, this is the attention curve, the red one. This is the non-focalized. We turn it off, and then attention and lack of attention are mixed. So we're not in a meditative state. We turn it on, and attention is separated. So we're using it for ADHD now. And it's just a magnetic field of a very low intensity, almost homeopathic. Then we published another article. I was abroad, so I just collaborated with the research. I'm not in the paper, but we did, Greco and De Stefani did the study with heart rate variability, and we did the alpha setup. We studied which frequency was good for depression. This is a depressed brain, by the way. No chi. What is depression, you know? No chi in the brain. How do I measure chi? Activity. What kind of activity? In this case, is a PET. So positron emission technology that shows us metabolic activity. How do we know? We mark the molecule with sugar. And then we see that it's absorbed and there's a lot of electrical energy. This is a non-depressed patient in a resting state. So there's no movie there. There's no activity is performing. It's just in a resting state, but full of energy. This is depressed. So some areas have energy, but the rest is blue. That's Pisa, University of Pisa. And we discovered which type of frequencies were good to treat depression, and we started. And we had clinical case. And then my colleagues are also working 14 hours a day, so we're all kind of pragmatic people. And then they produced the article. We put the band in depression. We put that magnetic stimulation, not in the body. We put it on the head, but a little bit outside the head. This idea came because living in India, then in the midterm of school, I went to the north where Tibetans are, and I got acquainted with their philosophy. I met the Dalai Lama. They were doing the Kala Chakra initiation. At the time, it was many years ago, there was only 2 Westerners. It was me and Richard Gere. Everybody knows Richard Gere. And we were there, and one thing that I was really interested in was their approach to the soul. And there's one Bön practice, one shamanic practice, which is called soul retrieval, which means they know when a person is not healthy in the mind, they know something is wrong with the soul, something that we don't have in our medicine. What is soul medicine? The Chinese have a term for this, which is Shen, because the 3 treasures are the Jing, the substance, the Qi, and then the Shen. Shen is the spirit, we might call it. You need to call it back. How do you call it back? With the sound of, with a specific sound. You say, come back. That's 10 hertz, basically. This one's. The frequencies around, you know, there's around alpha, 10, 11, 12. So when you call it, it basically reuniting the spirit with the body, and the body has a way to adjust it. And that's not theory. We're doing it. Now, this morning, they sent me a message. This girl came from Frankfurt, and she was completely depressed. She tried to kill herself twice. Luckily, one time, she ingested homeopathics, thinking it was medicine, so it was harmless. But another time, she ingested drugs. So they brought this girl. I treated her for 1.5 hours with this protocol, and they sent me a message. She changed completely. Before, she used to cut herself. She was shaving her head. Now she's looking healthier. And it was one session. So you can call it soul retrieval. You can call it resynchronization, brain synchronization. But that's what we did. That's alpha. It's not a new thing. The Ptolemy observed that watching a flickering sunlight through the spokes of a spinning wheel you can have a sort of euphoric effect. That's 200, in the year 200. They already knew it. You can also use it in hypnosis. The pendulum, you go into alpha, and alpha adjusts that sort of brain function to body that then makes that commanding entity go back. That's 10 hertz again. You can put a 10 hertz emitter at a specific frequency. What you'll notice, bees will be attracted to that. A swarm of bees will arrive, 10 hertz. It's almost like the call of nature. And this is why when you meditate, you attract that sort of, especially if I can do an EEG and see that you're generating alpha waves, you can also visualize things because alpha start here, start in the occipital lobe. They start from the back, alpha rhythm, and they go towards the front. But our brain is made in a specific way that these areas here are not controlling sensations or feelings, they're controlling ideas. So whenever you have a doubt, self-doubt, or you're thinking, it's taking too long, or it's taking, these two parts are controlling. So the self-criticism comes from here. Anglo-Saxon population said, we have a trick. We drink.
The frontal cortex.
Yeah, frontal cortex. When you drink, the frontal cortex is somewhere else, and we're all closer. We speak closer to one another. Because the frontal cortex is inhibited. That's what alcohol does. This is why it helps socialization. But the point is to analyze these waves and to know what they do. When my body is like a guitar, when my body is generating 10 hertz, what does it mean? And then we went and dissected this alpha, and we found that 8 hertz is typical of people that are friendly, chatting, but also a bit impulsive, energetic. Italians are all immediate. 9.5 is also in the alpha, but it's less energetic. It's peaceful and reliable. So if you do an EEG for HR, human resources, you do an EEG, you know if that person can do that job or not with one EEG. And I did the same on 100 young students in UCLA. Dario Nardi, were you there when we spoke about Dario Nardi? UCLA. They were kind enough to allow the testing, and I did the testing day and night, and we noticed that there is a composite function of the alpha. 10.5 is typical of people that are worried. They worry about disturbing others, their personal space. So we can use EEG, the frequency, the sound of the person, to actually know who they are emotionally. Alpha is emotion. Alpha is mainly emotions. And 12 waves per second is less happy and more open, but at the same time it goes towards the concentrating frequencies, the beta. We also noticed that 10 has to do with memory. Trauma is memory. If you have a trauma from childhood, whatever trauma, and you are in that alpha space for quite a while, you delete it. The trauma is associated with nothingness. The same thing that Shapiro did with the eyes. Did you know EMDR? EMDR is a technique where you're recalling the negative experience. Well, then you go into alpha. Everything you do with your eyes, left and right, or where you open and close, or when you open and close for more seconds. Now, if I had an EEG, my alpha waves would be very big. So this is why when you meditate, you just exhale, the controlled breathing. That's chi and prana, controlled breathing. You have a posture. I think, as Dan was putting it, standing is better than sitting in meditation, because sitting, especially for us, means to relax too much. So if we stand and we close our eyes, maybe hands have a specific. There's another topic, that's mudra. Mudra is how we coordinate the fingers, and that is the map in our brain. But basically, we cause this. We create a sort of device that deletes everything. It also deletes bad memories. If you have good memories, they might come up. But first, you have to eliminate the bad ones. Eyes open, eyes closed. You close your eyes, alpha get big. Now, alpha are also associated with pain. So when I do acupuncture, I ask the person not to close their eyes. Don't do the, okay, now I'm ready, because you're more sensitive to pain. You're more sensitive to everything. You become hypersensitive. And then we continued the studies with Francesco Crescentini wrote this article on autistic children, and we started the same thing. I started with 10 in Italy, then we did 15 in Canada, and this is the last one I published. Greco is also a director of a clinic. I am a main researcher in this article, and Chiara was the psychologist that did all the studies. So effects of low-frequency electromagnetic field on autistic children. Now, you can come up with all explanation you want about autism, but if we put it in the realm of the topic we're treating, the topic we're discussing, it's the soul that is not really controlling the body. So I'm looking for methods to call it back. And so we proposed something, the Institute was ready, and they adopted the method. This is the machine, this is the bed, and the therapy is called ion cyclotron resonance therapy, and we're applying it on autism. Now, with autistic children, you have a prompt response because there is less mind. First of all, they're children. Second, they're autistic. So this is the improvement after therapy. This is pre-test, and this is the post-test. We use different metrics. This one is called the Peabody Picture Vocabulary Test, number 4, and these are all the improvements. So it's reduction of anxiety, reduction of linguistic problems, and so on. So we have good results. And we learned a lesson. The lesson is we need to understand electromagnetism. We need to understand that we live on a planet, and the planet is trying to tell us something. There's a bridge. The Chinese say, 天完地方, which means the sky. Tian is very important for ancient culture, even for Turks and Tibetans. It means what happens right there in the cosmos. But it's difficult to compute. It's like a circle with many angles, infinite angles. But the Earth is square, which means it's here, it's pragmatic. And from Earth, from the center of Earth, comes a field which we can measure. It's approximately 30 microtesla. We know the intensity. We know it's a direct emission. It's not pulsating. It is, but only in intensity and very slow. It depends on ionosphere, the sun, and so on. Now, there was a question about the 13 moons this morning. Yeah, 13 moons. 13 moons? 13 moons? Yeah, yeah. Now we have, Dan spoke about the calculation, the reckoning of time, and the I Ching is also called the Book of the Moon. We have 64 hexagrams. Somebody's good with math? 64 times 6. 384. How many lines there are in the Book of Change, which is the original book? If you really want to study only one book in your life, is what Dan said.
Nobody knows what the original is.
Yeah, the most important book you'll ever read in your life is the I Ching, is the Book of Changes. The only permanent thing is change. Pantarei Heraclitus said, everything changes, everything mutates, but it mutates in a period. We have 384 changes. Now, if we divide this by 13, I tell you because I know. So 384 divided by 13, which is the times we have a change in the moon during the year, is 29.5, which is the days required for every moon to be in the same phase. So from new moon to new moon, there's 29.5 days. From full moon to full moon, 29.5 days. So that is one way that our planet and our body uses to calculate time. We feel the moon. Do you feel the moon? I feel the moon. Full moon, I can't sleep. Everything I do in new moon doesn't work. You know, kitchen has to arrive, and then things leak, and so I don't do anything on new moon. I rest. I do meditation. Full moon, like 15th of March, I was full on with activity. So I've learned that there is difference in chi distribution and energy according to geomagnetic fluctuations. We are on a planet, we can compute it, we know what it is, it's physics, and we apply it and it works. So this is the merging of science and wisdom, and I wanted to give you an example. Thank you very much.